The Whispering Woods. It was an unseasonably cold autumn evening when Ethan and his friends dared to venture into the infamous Whispering Woods. The local legend told of a family that vanished in the forest decades ago, leaving only cryptic carvings on the trees behind. The carvings, etched deep into the bark, were said to spell out warnings in a language no one could understand. Armed with flashlights and bravado, the group laughed off the tales, determined to prove they were nothing more than superstition. The dense canopy above swallowed the moonlight, and the further they ventured, the heavier the silence became, broken only by the crunch of dead leaves underfoot. As they delved deeper, the trees began to change. The gnarled trunks twisted unnaturally, and strange symbols became visible in the dim light. One by one, the friends noticed whispers that seemed to emanate from the very air around them. They were soft at first, like the rustle of leaves, but grew louder, forming fragmented phrases that chilled their blood. Ethan stopped abruptly, shining his flashlight on a particularly grotesque carving. It depicted a human-like figure, twisted and stretched, its limbs melding with the roots of a tree. Beneath it, a single word was etched clearly: beware. Panic set in as the whispers turned into guttural voices calling their names. One of them, Sarah, screamed as her flashlight revealed a shadowy figure darting between the trees. The group tried to retrace their steps, but the path seemed to shift, leading them in circles. The trees seemed alive, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Ethan noticed something horrifying. The carvings were no longer static. They were changing, forming grotesque depictions of the friends, each in a state of agony. Desperation gripped them as they ran blindly, the voices now a deafening cacophony. One by one, Ethan's friends disappeared into the darkness, their screams swallowed by the forest. He stumbled into a clearing, heart pounding, only to find an ancient stone altar. Around it were carvings of faces, frozen in terror, eerily similar to his friends. The whispers ceased, replaced by a heavy, oppressive silence. Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine as a shadow loomed behind him, its presence unmistakable. The next morning, the forest was eerily quiet. A search party found no trace of the group, only their flashlights scattered on the forest floor. On a nearby tree, fresh carvings had appeared. A line of human figures, their faces twisted in horror. The last figure in the row had Ethan's unmistakable profile, his mouth open in a silent scream. The townsfolk, though terrified, knew better than to enter the Whispering Woods again. Legends, after all, have roots deeper than reason can reach. Ethan's parents couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them when they stood at the forest's edge, calling his name. Days turned into weeks, and the search efforts dwindled. Still, the Whispering Woods seemed to pulse with an unnatural life. At night, villagers reported hearing faint, distorted laughter and distant cries echoing from the trees. Ethan's mother, consumed by grief, insisted on returning to the forest every day, standing at the boundary and pleading for her son to come home. She swore she could hear his voice whispering back, faint and heart-wrenchingly close, but no one dared to join her to confirm it. Weeks later, a lone hiker entered the woods, determined to unravel its mystery despite the warnings. He carried a camera, a notebook, and enough skepticism to challenge the myths. Hours passed without incident, and he felt emboldened, even mocking the supposed curse. But as dusk fell, he stumbled upon a tree marked with dozens of carvings, all of them depicting wide, terrified eyes. A strange compulsion gripped him, and he traced one carving with his fingers. The whispering began immediately, low and urgent, in a language he couldn't understand. Before he could move, the forest seemed to close in, the trees bending unnaturally to block his escape. The hiker's footage was recovered weeks later by another search party that ventured cautiously into the wood's edge. The final moments showed his trembling hands pointing the camera toward the clearing with the altar. There was no sound except the rapid beat of his breath, followed by a sickening crunch as the camera hit the ground. The last frame captured a blurred, elongated shadow standing over him, its face a featureless void. The search party retrieved nothing else, save for a scrap of paper from the hiker's notebook that read, "The forest knows." In the years that followed, the forest remained untouched, its secrets buried beneath layers of fear and folklore. But occasionally, on nights when the wind was still, villagers claimed to see flickers of movement between the trees, shadows that didn't belong, faces that seemed to emerge from the bark before fading again. Some said the forest grew denser with each passing year, swallowing paths and landmarks whole, as if it were expanding. No one dared to challenge it. The Whispering Woods wasn't just a place. It was alive, ancient, and hungry, and it would wait patiently for its next visitors to heed or ignore its sinister call. Years turned into decades, and the legend of the Whispering Woods became a chilling bedtime story told to scare children into obedience. Yet, as the village modernized, whispers of curiosity began to rise again. A group of college students, eager to debunk the tales, decided to document their own adventure. Equipped with cameras, drones, and other technology, they assured the wary villagers they'd be fine. "It's just an old story," they laughed, waving off warnings. The villagers watched in silence as the group disappeared into the forest, their confidence as fragile as the autumn leaves crunching beneath their feet. The footage they captured was unlike anything anyone had seen before. The drones, though advanced, failed to map the terrain. Their GPS signals flickered erratically before shutting off completely. The students' cameras revealed fleeting glimpses of things they hadn't seen with their eyes, shadowy figures darting between the trees, and faces emerging briefly in the bark. In one video, a student leaned close to a strange carving, only for his reflection in the camera lens to smile back unnaturally. The recordings abruptly ended with a crescendo of screams and static. Days later, their abandoned equipment was found at the forest's edge, intact but eerily silent. The villagers no longer speak of the Whispering Woods. The mere mention of its name seems to summon an oppressive stillness that makes the air feel heavier. The forest itself seems to have grown taller and darker, its edges creeping closer to the village with each passing year. People avoid even looking in its direction, terrified they might catch sight of something watching back. But every so often, when the wind howls just right, the whispers return, and those brave or foolish enough to listen can still hear the names of the lost, carried on the wind like a mournful chant, calling for others to join them.